The air in Obuoku Water Side was hot. It was a Thursday afternoon, and the air felt heavy. The sun was very strong, making the small village quiet. Most adults were inside, looking for cool places. 8-year-old Amara had a lot of energy. Her feet were quick and covered in red dust. She was chasing a butterfly, a monarch with orange wings. It flew around the dry yard, staying just ahead of her. Amara laughed, but the quiet afternoon quickly swallowed the sound. She chased the butterfly easily. She walked past the outdoor cooking spot, through a low hedge, and onto the narrow path behind the village church. This path was the end of the village and the start of the river. The butterfly kept flying, dipping and rising, pulling Amara into the shade of the mango trees. She didn't look back. She only focused on the sound of her running feet and the orange wings that were always out of reach. She ran past the old white church wall where the path had tall wild grass. Then she saw the Obu Water Side. It was not fast or noisy. It was a wide, slow stretch of dark green water. It was calm, silent and deep. The butterfly landed on purple riverweed right at the edge. Amara ran fast to catch it. She stopped quickly. The butterfly flew up right away, floated over the water and vanished into the bushes on the other side. Amara sighed and pushed her hair back. She stood at the river's edge, where the bank was soft and slippery with dark mud. She watched the water move, looking at the small circles that appeared and went away quickly. The river was quiet, smooth, and did not care. Back at the compound, her mother, Mama Amara, finally woke up from her rest. The house was too quiet. A small worried feeling started in her stomach. "Amara?" she called. No one answered. "Amara, are you here?" The search started with a small worry, grew into fast walking, and quickly became a loud, scared rush. Neighbors joined in, their worried questions turning into loud shouts as they checked every house. They followed the path Amara had taken. Her small footprints were still visible in the dry dirt. Her teenage cousin was the first to reach the riverbank. He saw the disturbed mud, the fresh tracks that stopped suddenly. A moment later, he saw the sandals. He did not need to check more. His scream was pure terror, instantly ending the day's silence. When the adults arrived, they saw the sign of what happened. One small plastic sandal was stuck firmly in the thick black mud, its pink color now dull. The other floated gently at the edge of the Obu Water Side, moving with the water's slow rhythm. The river was still peaceful, reflecting the sky without one ripple of concern. It was completely calm, as if nothing had happened, as if it had simply taken a small thing and gone back to sleep. Amara was gone. The search that followed was frantic but failed. Fishermen pulled nets, men walked deep into the water, and women cried on the bank, shouting her name until they could not speak. They searched until the stars came out, until the moon made the river look silver and tricky. They searched for days, but the river did not give up its secret. From that Thursday on, the river carried a quiet, bad fear. It became a place people avoided talking about, a body of water that demanded respect, or better yet, distance. The people held a silent, deep belief. Amara had not just fallen in, the river had taken her. It was a secret they never fully spoke, but everyone in Obuoku Water Side understood it. The river was beautiful, but it had asked for a life. 10 years and many miles away, in the noisy concrete city of Abuja, Linda decided she had had enough. The choice was not made with a shout, but with the quiet, tiring certainty of a slow failure. At 28, she felt stuck in a life that was cheap and used up, like the fake leather shoes she wore to the hair salon every day. Her boss at Splendid Curls, Madam Kemi, had a smile that was fake, like the cheap hair she sold. Madam Kemi treated Linda like a tool, only useful when she was working and ignored otherwise. The worst part was her salary, which was always late, always wrong, and usually came with a lecture about Linda's lack of attention. "Linda, you are too slow. Your hands must move like a machine, not like a tired old woman," Madam Kemi had shouted that morning, right in front of a rich client. The shame settled in Linda's chest, heavy and cold. Her life outside work was also bad. She had wasted 4 years on Chai Nidu, 4 years of cooking, cleaning, and emotional support, sure that he would marry her. Then, 3 months ago, he stopped answering his phone. No fight, no last goodbye, just nothing. A silent disappearance that made her feel useless and unseen. Even her friends only called when they needed something. They remembered to text if they wanted to go out. They acted like strangers if they saw her in traffic. But when they needed a free braid or a discount on hair, Linda's phone would ring. "Oh, my dear Linda, I knew you would help me." She was tired of being the useful, affordable person in her own life. That evening, Linda walked home through the heavy traffic and the market shouts. She reached her small room, a single space that held her mattress, a small gas burner, and her disappearing hopes, and stared at the wall. The wall was painted a happy blue, but it felt like she was trapped in a box. She dropped her purse. The noise was flat and final. This was not a life. This was just surviving without purpose. She wanted her own business. She wanted to be the one giving the orders. She wanted respect she didn't have to pay for with free work. The next day, she did not go to the hair salon. She went to the market. She did not buy hair supplies. She bought the biggest, dustiest Ghana must-go bag she could find, the woven kind travelers used to move their whole lives. Linda returned and started packing. She pushed her whole life into the bag, her small pile of savings, her best scissors, 4 good combs, 3 nice dresses, and 2 large books on styling hair. The packing felt like a ceremony, a physical throwing away of her last 2 years in Abuja. She left a short note and 2 months' rent for her landlord, and she walked out. She did not look back at the room, the street, or the city. Abuja had taken more from her than it had given. At the busy bus park, surrounded by street sellers and loud ticket agents, Linda felt a sense of scary freedom. She needed a new start, a place where no one knew her name, where no one had seen her fail. She remembered hearing 2 old women talking at the salon weeks ago. "Obuoku Water Side," one had said. "It's small, but they say it's cheap and peaceful. You can disappear there if you need to." Cheap and peaceful? That was exactly what Linda needed now. She went to the ticket window. "Where are you going?" The conductor yelled, his voice rough. "I need a ticket," Linda said, her voice stronger than she expected. "To Obuoku Water Side." She paid, pulled her heavy Ghana must-go bag onto the bus, and took a window seat. As the bus drove away, she leaned her head against the cool glass. She promised the fading city skyline that she would never return to Abuja. She was heading for peace, or at least for a new place to fight. The bus ride to Obuoku Water Side was terrible. It took 2 full days. The bus was old, the roads were broken, and the constant shaking gave Linda a sharp headache. When they finally stopped in the village square, a small, dusty, open area surrounded by market stalls, Linda was tired, but her mind was still focused. Obuoku Water Side was exactly as she had heard, cheap and on the surface, quiet. The air was fresh here, smelling of burning wood and damp earth from the river. The houses were mostly brick, painted with bright colors, sitting under huge mahogany trees. There were no tall buildings, no choking traffic, and no judging stares. Her first task was to find a place to sleep. She quickly rented a small room in a big compound owned by Mama Emeka. The room barely fit her mattress and the Ghana must-go bag, and the rent was tiny compared to Abuja. "You look like a city person," Mama Emeka observed, watching Linda unpack a thin blanket. "Why did you come to our quiet place?" Linda smiled, trying to sound sure of herself. "I am here to start my business, a place to sell good food." Mama Emeka simply nodded, her face showing nothing. "Good, good. You will see. We have a lot of quiet here." Linda settled in quickly. She was too busy working to worry about the quiet. She was determined to save money, and that meant taking any job she could find. She worked as a salesgirl at a small store for a week, learning to make change fast and listening to the owner's complaints. She spent 10 days selling fried yam by the roadside, but the hot oil burned her arm and the profit was low. Her deepest shame was the quick cash jobs she took at night. Sometimes, when it was very dark and her savings were low, Linda would meet people for money. These moments were short, cold, and left her feeling empty. She would count the few crumpled Naira notes afterward, telling herself it was for the kitchen, that this shame was a necessary cost for her future respect. She became friends with Machi, a young woman who sold cold drinks and phone credit. Machi was kind, loud, and knew all the local news. She often gave Linda advice and sometimes a free soda. "You work too hard, Linda," Machi said one afternoon, watching Linda stack bottles. The city girl wants to become a village restaurant owner. I want my own place, Machi, Linda replied, wiping sweat from her face. A place where I set the prices and the rules. I am tired of working for other people. After about a month, Linda had saved a small, important pile of money. It was the result of all her hard work. It was a start, but real shops in the main market area were too expensive, well out of her reach. Landlords wanted years of rent right away, and Linda felt her dream shrinking, turning back into a lie. She walked past the market daily, staring at the empty shops, their glass windows laughing at her small efforts. The peaceful life had a high cost, and she was still too poor. Frustration grew inside her. She realized that moving to a quiet village hadn't made earning money easier. It had only made the cost of failure lower. One evening, while eating rice, Linda told Machi about her problem. I just need a roof, Machi, a cheap roof. I can do the rest. I have my pots, my skills, my recipes. I just need a place that won't break me before I start. Machi suddenly went quiet, stirring her food. She looked around the small restaurant nervously, even though they were alone in their corner. There is one building, Machi finally whispered, leaning in, but no one has gone near it for 10 years. Linda's heart sped up. Where? Tell me, Machi. By the main road? Machi shook her head. No, by the river, the Obu Water Side. A strange cold feeling went down Linda's back, despite the heat. Why? Does it belong to the village chief? Machi paused, her eyes slightly wide. No, it's just empty. They say no business ever lasts there. It was a small kitchen long ago, but well, it just stayed empty. No one will rent it, no one will buy it. It's where the quiet has a price no one wants to talk about. Machi didn't say more, but the fear in her eyes was a clear warning. To Linda, drowning in sadness, it did not sound like a bad luck sign. It sounded like a miracle of cheap rent. She had not believed village stories in Abuja, and she would not start believing in river ghosts now. She would take the risk. Linda chose not to ask Machi any more questions. The fear in her friend's eyes seemed small compared to the fear of staying poor and stuck. The next morning, after a small breakfast, Linda found the landlord Machi had mentioned, an old quiet man named Chief Nwafor. She was direct. I want the empty building by the river. I will pay 6 months' rent right now. In cash. Chief Nwafor looked at her with the deep, judging stare of a man who had seen many people come and go by the Obu Water Side. He raised a questioning eyebrow. The riverside building? It has been empty for a long time. No one wants it. Are you sure, city girl? It is far from the market. I am sure, Linda said strongly. I like the peace. Chief Nwafor shrugged, happy to take the thick roll of Naira notes. He was glad to get any rent at all. He gave her the key, a heavy old piece of iron, and warned her, it's been 10 years, girl, it will be very dirty inside. He didn't mention the missing child, he didn't mention the whispers. He simply took the money and left Linda to the river's silent watch. Linda wasted no time. She hurried to the riverbank, following the path until she saw the building. It was short and rectangular, set slightly away from the nearest houses, its back wall almost touching the riverbank. It looked sad, its concrete walls stained green with moss, the metal roof rusty and peeling. The iron key scraped the lock. The door opened with a loud groan, letting out a heavy burst of old, trapped air. Chief Nwafor's warning was too mild. The place was terrible. Thick cobwebs hung everywhere like dusty grey cloth. The air smelled strongly of wet dirt and decay. Thick dust covered the floor, the old wooden counter, and the broken windows. It felt less like a building and more like a tomb. Linda looked around, and instead of giving up, she felt a strong rush of ownership. This is mine. It was her first physical goal achieved, her declaration of independence. She went back to her room, bought a broom, buckets and soap, and came back with a strong goal. For the next 3 days, Linda cleaned. She scrubbed the floors until her knees hurt and her nails were broken. She pulled down the thick cobwebs and swept up large piles of dirt, dead leaves and old trash. She used most of her remaining cash to buy paint, a bright, hopeful shade of green, and painted the inside herself, working until late at night, using only a kerosene lamp for light. The space changed slowly, with much effort. When she finished painting, she saw the room not as an empty shed, but as a blank space for her cooking dreams. The next day, she went to the local market and spent almost all her last money on basic equipment: a strong wooden table, 2 used gas burners, a stack of heavy iron pots, and a second-hand generator. Very important for the village's unreliable reporter. Within 2 weeks, the change was complete. On a newly painted sign, written in slightly crooked letters, was the name Linda's Feast. It stood right next to the Obu Water Side, next to the calm, deep and silent river. The community's reaction was quick and quiet. They didn't complain, they just watched. Children who used to play near the bank now stayed a safe, curious distance away. Adults whispered, their conversations stopping suddenly when Linda walked past. They threw quick, nervous glances toward the building, looking away fast if Linda tried to look back. They avoided her kitchen with a clear, unspoken fear. It was as if the building itself carried a dangerous sickness. Linda would wave at people, smile widely, and even stand outside, offering friendly greetings. Nothing worked. She tried to think clearly. They need to trust me. I am new here. Give it time. She told herself the riverside was nice, and its calm feeling would eventually draw in the peaceful customers she wanted. But weeks turned into a painful month, and then another. Linda's Feast stayed empty. Not one customer crossed her door to buy food. The shiny pots stayed unused, the burners cold and quiet. Desperation became a physical pain. Her small savings ran out. Linda became skilled at living on nothing. When hunger became too much, she would suck on dry Maggi cubes, the salty taste giving a quick false feeling that tricked her stomach. Other times, she would soak coarse garret in the cold river water, stirring it until it swelled, and close her eyes, pretending the gritty, plain mix was a rich, cold dessert. The villagers continued to ignore her. The whispers got louder now. No business survives by the river. It is unlucky. Linda, chewing on a Maggi cube, refused to believe it. I believe in second chances. I believe in hard work. There is no such thing as a curse. She repeated these words like a magic phrase, but the growing emptiness in her stomach made the words thin and weak. She was fighting not just for her business, but against the weight of a whole community's deep superstition. The rain started around 9 in the evening. It was a heavy tropical downpour that beat hard on the metal roof of Linda's Feast. The noise was loud, trapping Linda inside a box of sound and water. She sat on a small stool, the only comfortable seat she owned, staring at her tired face in a small, cheap mirror. Her face was thin, and her eyes looked empty from failure. She hadn't eaten anything solid all day. Her strong will was finally starting to break under the endless difficulty of being poor. Bad luck, she thought bitterly. The word tasted sharp in her mouth. Maybe they were right. Maybe the river hadn't just claimed a child, maybe it had claimed all the hope on its bank. She put out the kerosene lamp and lay down on a thin mat behind the counter, trying to sleep despite the storm. The wind howled, sounding like someone crying, and the river water, which had been calm for months, was now moving hard, splashing the edges of the building. Around midnight, when the rain had become a gentle, steady drumming, Linda heard it. Knock, knock, knock. It was a quiet sound, almost shy, but clear over the fading sound of the storm. Linda froze. She lifted her head, listening hard over the sound of the dripping water. It couldn't be. No one in Obuoku was outside at this hour, especially after a storm. Even the drunk fishermen were home hours ago. She listened, her heart suddenly beating fast against her ribs. Knock, knock. A little louder this time. Steady. Linda quickly stood up. She was shaking, a cold sweat starting on her skin. She fumbled for the lamp, her hands shaking with fear, and finally managed to light the wick. The small flame cast shaky, long shadows around the kitchen. "Who is it?" she called out, her voice thin. Silence, only the sound of dripping water and the deep, steady current of the Obu River outside. It must be the wind, she told herself. A falling branch. Then, a third time. Knock, knock, knock. Definitely on the door, not the wind. Linda prayed silently, quickly saying the only prayer she could remember from her childhood. God, if this is danger, protect me. If this is help, show me. She walked to the door slowly, step by painful step, her bare feet silent on the cold concrete floor. She held the heavy iron key that was still in the lock, ready to lock it tight if she saw anything scary. Taking a deep, shaking breath, she slowly pulled the door inward, just a cracker. Standing there was a woman. She was barefoot and completely soaked. Water poured from her long, thick hair, which was black and very straight, sticking to her back and shoulders. Her simple cloth wrapper, a dark blue color, was stuck to her body, but even though she was wet, she looked clean, almost peaceful. She looked human, but her presence felt strange. She was too quiet, too still. Her large, dark eyes seemed to take in the lamp's weak light instead of reflecting it. She didn't gasp like someone caught in the rain, and she didn't shiver. She just stood there, giving off a strange inner calm. "Can I help you?" Linda asked, her voice weak. The woman smiled, a slow, soft curve of the lips that did not quite reach her eyes. "Yes, I think you can." She pushed the door slightly wider and walked inside. Linda, frozen by fear and curiosity, backed away. The woman sat down on Linda's stool and instantly looked like she belonged there. She didn't drip water onto the floor. The wetness seemed to just dry up or disappear beneath her. "My name is Didi," the woman said, her voice soft like water flowing over stones. "I have heard you, Linda. I have seen your struggles." Linda was completely confused. My struggles? I don't know you. Are you looking to order food? I don't have anything cooked right now." Didi shook her head. "Not now. I have come to make you rich." She leaned forward, her eyes catching the lamplight. "You worry about money, about food, about what comes next. I saw you chewing on salt cubes. I saw you mixing gari in the river water and pretending it was ice cream." Linda felt a cold shock of shame and fear. No one knew that, absolutely no one. Didi continued, her tone simple and clear. "You will know who I am later. For now, listen. I want you to sell the dishes I will give you. I will bring the ingredients. The money from the sales, all of it, will be yours. All you have to do is cook and sell the food." "Food?" Linda stammered. "I don't understand. Are you a supplier? I don't have the money to buy your supplies." "I am the supplier," Didi confirmed. She stood up, smoothing the front of her wrapper. The ingredients will be here in the morning." She walked toward the door. Linda, too stunned to move, watched her. Didi stopped at the entrance, turning to look back at Linda one last time. "Do not think of leaving this place, Linda. Do not move your kitchen. The river protects those who are useful to it." Then Didi walked out. Linda rushed to the door, looking out into the dark. She saw Didi's shape move toward the riverbank. She didn't follow the path. She walked straight toward the water. In the faint moonlight, Linda watched Didi step into the Obu Water Side. The river did not push back. It seemed to welcome her. Didi walked slowly, calmly, until the water reached her waist, then her shoulders, and then with a final, smooth, silent dip, she disappeared beneath the surface, as if she were returning home. Linda did not sleep at all. She sat up until morning, huddled on her mat, the kerosene lamp burning low, her mind replaying the strange, scary visit. A woman who looked human, smelled of wet earth, knew her secret shame, promised wealth, and walked into the river like it was a normal thing. When the first light of the sun, a pale orange glow, began to shine through the dusty windows, Linda finally made herself stand. She was stiff, terrified, and intensely curious. She checked the front step. Nothing. She checked the doorframe. Nothing. Then she saw it. Tucked against the wall, near the entrance, was a black nylon bag. It was an ordinary grocery bag, but it felt strangely heavy and cold when she touched it. Linda paused, her hand shaking as she reached for it. Her deepest feelings told her to run, to leave the bag, to leave Obuoku and forget she ever saw the river. But her stomach, empty and aching from months of hunger, felt stronger. She dragged the bag inside, carefully untied the knot and looked in. Inside were ingredients. Not the cheap common yams and old fish she could afford, but food that was perfect. There were large, unblemished tubers of white yam, thick cuts of fresh, good meat, and a variety of bright, special spices. Everything looked very high quality, far beyond her budget. Linda, a skilled cook, knew the value instantly. This food was worth a lot of money. Where did this come from? Linda felt a sudden fear and excitement. How could she explain this sudden large amount of expensive food? She couldn't tell Machi about Didi or the river. It sounded completely crazy. While she stood there, caught between right and wrong and hunger, a shadow fell across the doorway. A young woman stood there, dressed well, looking around. "Excuse me, is this Linda's feast?" she asked, looking at her phone. Linda blinked. "Yes, it is. But we aren't open yet. Did you want to order something?" "I saw your post," the woman said, smiling brightly, "on social media. That afang soup you advertised this morning. I drove over from the city for it. It looks amazing." Linda felt a cold shock. "Social media? I don't have an account." "Oh, it was definitely you. Linda's feast, Obuoku Water Side. Let me show you." The woman held out her phone, displaying a picture of a perfectly plated dish. A soup Linda had never cooked before, with a caption advertising a special opening menu. The page was called Linda's Feast. Linda stared at the picture. She had never taken that photo. She had never created that page. Yet there it was, live and drawing clients. Before she could process the shock, another woman arrived, followed by a third, both strangers, both asking about the special food they'd heard about. By 9 a.m., a line had formed outside her small, newly painted kitchen. The line was made up mostly of strangers, people from out of town, and even a few locals she hadn't seen before. None of them could clearly explain how they heard about her, only that they felt a sudden, strong need to eat at the kitchen by the river. Hunger and desperation were strong reasons to act. Linda was broke, starving and terrified, but the sight of a line of paying customers was a lure she could not resist. She pushed the questions about Didi and the river into the darkest corner of her mind. Don't look at the gift too closely. Work. She began to cook, fry and sell. Her hands, trained by years of city struggle, moved with quick practice skill. She charged high prices, prices she would never have dared to ask before, matching the quality of the ingredients. She cooked the food the supernatural page had advertised. Of the 15 women who came that day, 5 ordered large, expensive portions, buying extra provisions and drinks. She took cash, counted it, and counted it again. By the time the last client left, her hands were tired from the work. She locked the door, poured the cash box onto the counter, and stared. One day? Less than a day of cooking. Over 900,000 naira, a year of her old salary. She sank onto the stool, the pile of money shocking her. Should she thank God for the unexpected gift? Or should she run now, before the bad luck, or the river, came to collect? That night, Didi visited her again, not at the door, but in a dream that felt completely real. Linda found herself standing on the riverbank, but the river was not water. It was a sheet of liquid gold. Didi stood before her, still wet, but her shape was clearer, less like a shadow. "You are working well, Linda," Didi whispered, her voice like ringing air. "The river feeds those who feed it." Linda felt a burst of courage. "I am afraid, Didi. I want to leave. I want to sell this food and run away." Didi's calm look turned hard, like ice. "You cannot leave. If you leave, the river takes more than money. It takes your happiness, your memories, your very sense of self." She pointed a glistening finger toward the kitchen. "Do not leave. Fix up the building. Make it bigger. Show the village how strong my peace is." Linda woke up sweating, the fear a cold lump in her gut. But when she checked the counter, the pile of cash was still there, warm and real. The next morning, another black nylon bag, full of fresh, perfect ingredients, waited quietly at her door. The decision was made for her. Linda started the renovations the very same day. The first fear slowly disappeared and was replaced by a routine of scared, yet profitable acceptance. The morning ritual became fixed. Linda would wake up, check the front step, and find a fresh, damp, black nylon bag full of high-quality food supplies. The ghost social media account, updated by unseen hands, would already have advertised the meals. And by 8:30 a.m., the line would start to form. Linda's feast became strange, a massive success. It was the only business in Obuoku Water Side that truly did well. Linda used the sudden cash flow exactly as Didi asked. She completely fixed the building, fixing the weak structure, putting in proper tiles, and buying a powerful new generator. She installed industrial-grade stainless steel surfaces, bought comfortable seating, and even built a small new back room where she slept instead of returning to Mama Emeka's compound. Within 3 months, Linda's feast was changed from a dusty, ignored shack into a fancy, air-conditioned eatery. She hired 2 young women from a nearby town as staff, paying them well and on time. She finally opened a real, official social media account, managed by one of her new staff members, but even this genuine page seemed only to be catching up to the fame the magical one had already created. The special dishes, advertised with luxurious names, sold out almost immediately. The community had to change its response from avoiding her to being amazed. The whispers didn't stop, but they changed their tone. Instead of, "The river is bad luck," they now murmured, "The river must have blessed this girl's cooking." Linda, who had recently been the desperate city girl chewing Maggie cubes, was now a figure of huge local curiosity and respect. Machi was the most confused. She visited Linda at the kitchen, her eyes wide as she looked at the shining steel and the expensive new equipment. "Linda, I don't understand," Machi said one afternoon. "3 months ago you were frying yam and nearly starving. Now look at this. You have equipment that costs more than my whole family compound. How did you do it?" Linda had prepared her answer. She smiled, a confident, practiced expression that felt heavy on her face. "My uncle in Canada, he saw my struggle. He sent me a large amount of money to start. He believes in my cooking talent, Machi." Machi looked doubtful but impressed. "Canada, you are lucky. God is great." Linda let the lie stand. God is great. The guilt was a dull pain beneath the surface of her new life, but the wealth was too bright, too exciting to reject. She pushed the thought away, telling herself that God had answered her prayers, even if the delivery woman was barefoot and smelt of the river. But the stories that followed the food were increasingly strange. It wasn't just about good meals, it was about sudden, big life changes. There was Amy, a single mother without a job who had struggled for years just to feed her 2 children. She spent nearly all her savings on a special afang soup meal at Linda's feast. The very next day she went to a wedding. At the party, a distant family member, a rich businessman she barely knew, approached her, impressed by her happy, confident look after the meal. He offered her a $5,000 grant to start a small catering business. Amy cried when she told Linda, sure the food had brought her good fortune. Then came Iwaya, a woman known in Obuoku for her 5-year inability to have a child. She bought a large meal of the Yolof rice special and ate it all. 2 days later, she woke up feeling sick. A week later, the doctor confirmed she was 2 months pregnant. Iya brought Linda a gift of yams and declared the food had changed her fate. And Bulma, a quiet university student. She bought the special okra soup, posted a picture of the perfect plate on TikTok, and woke up the next morning to 1 million views, high trending status, and a business deal from a major clothing company. Sudden successes became common. Clients left Linda's feast feeling lighter, happier, and strangely changed, emotionally and mentally. One shy person announced they felt incredibly powerful just by finishing the meal. Linda told herself it was just the power of feeling well-fed, simple good luck and grace. But in the quiet hours, late at night when the river murmured outside, she wondered, what truly powered these sudden turns of fate? Was it the ingredients, or was it the silent, cold deal Didi had arranged with the Obu Water Side? Linda's success brought her more than just money, it brought close attention. The village had many eyes, and the oldest, sharpest eyes belonged to Mama Alak. Mama Alaka was a widowed woman in her 60s, her face wrinkled from a life of hard work. She sold the best puff-puff in the village, setting up her small stall near the main road. But Mama Alak was known for more than her light, fluffy bean fritters. She was seen as the village fortune-teller. People asked for her advice, feared her predictions, and her steady, deep stare missed nothing. Mama Alaka noticed the change in Linda's feast first. It wasn't just how fast she fixed the building or how expensive the new generator was. It was the constant stream of strange, sleek cars that drove all the way to the riverside, stopping right at Linda's door. She noticed how Linda's customers arrived looking worried and left looking successful, shining with a sudden, unusual confidence. She noticed the ingredients themselves. When the morning sun hit the leftover food waste just right, the yam peels or fish bones seemed too perfectly clean, too smooth. The rich, enticing smell of the food that came from Linda's kitchen was almost too strong, too sweet, hanging in the air, unlike regular cooking smoke. The clearest sign, however, was her two pet goats, Femi and Titi. Mama Alak took them on a short walk every afternoon. The path usually took her within 50 meters of Linda's new kitchen. But now, whenever she tried to approach that part of the path, Femi and Titi would stop instantly. They would make loud goat noises, kick their legs, and pull backward, their eyes wide and rolling, refusing to walk past Linda's feast. Mad goats, Mama Alak muttered the first time, pulling them hard on their ropes. But it happened every day. The animals were terrified of the building, of the space, of the air around the successful new eatery. One night, Mama Alaka had a dream that proved her fear. She dreamed she was walking into Linda's feast. The kitchen was beautiful, filled with women waiting for their food. But when she looked closely, the clients were shadows, their shapes unclear, and the food they ate seemed to be constantly changing, like they were chewing on black sand and cold water. The massive, beautiful window didn't show faces or tables. It reflected the deep, churning green of the Obu Water Side, and the women's eyes in the glass were empty. Mama Alak woke up gasping, the smell of damp earth and river decay strong in her nose. The next morning she walked straight to Linda's feast, ignoring the panicked pulling of her goats. She tied them rowly to a post far down the path and walked the rest of the way alone. Linda was surprised to see the old woman. She had never been a customer. "Mama Alake, good morning. Can I get you some water? Maybe a free plate of puff-puff?" Linda offered, her voice too cheerful. She felt a knot of worry tightening in her chest under the old woman's steady stare. Mama Alak ignored the offer. She walked to the center of the room, her eyes looking over the modern equipment and the shining steel surfaces. She settled her gaze on Linda. "You have found wealth, child," she stated, her voice dry and rough. "That is good. The village needs wealth." Linda forced a smile. "Thank you, Mama." "Yes, business is finally good, just hard work succeeding." Mama Alak shook her head slowly. "Hard work pays the rent. Good fortune pays the first cost. But this," she pointed at the kitchen with an open hand, "this is a debt. Blessings from God grow slowly, like a yam seed. They take time, they feed many, and they make the soil better." She stepped closer to Linda, her eyes sharp, and lowered her voice to a chilling whisper. "But gifts from the water, they drown you in wanting more before they pull you under. The river does not give things freely. It only trades things. It needs service." Linda's polite smile disappeared. Her hands, which were about to prepare a fresh batch of spice mix, began to shake hard. "Mama Alake, I respect you, but you shouldn't worry about me. I promise you, I have a sponsor. Everything is honest." "A sponsor that smells of the midnight rain," the fortune teller countered quietly. "The river is never full, Linda. Be careful what you serve." Mama Alak did not wait for an answer. She turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving the heavy, silent weight of her warning hanging in the cool, air-conditioned air. Linda stood there, staring at her clean, new counter, unable to touch anything. She was deeply worried. Every time her hand brushed against the perfect ingredients Didi provided, she felt a coldness that went deeper than the skin. The old woman's words were like a slow poison, sucking the joy out of Linda's new wealth. She grew paranoid, constantly checking the riverbank, and her hands shook whenever she had to touch a fresh bag of Didi's supplies. One stormy night, about 6 months after Didi's first visit, the rain and wind returned, stronger than before. Linda was alone in the kitchen's small back room, unable to sleep, wrapped in the fear that this weather always brought. Around 1 a.m., she heard the sound, the door bolt sliding back. She hadn't locked it, a quiet sign of surrender. Didi walked in. She looked more beautiful, more powerful than before. Her black hair flowed down her back, and she moved with a beautiful smoothness. She was not wet tonight, but a faint, clean smell of river mud and electricity hung around her. In her hands, Didi carried a box. It was not the black nylon bag of regular supplies. This was a wooden chest, covered in polished brass, shining faintly in the light of Linda's emergency lamp. It looked old, heavy, and very expensive. Didi set the box gently on the center steel counter. "The river is happy with your service, Linda," she said, her voice smooth and deep. "You have fed it well. You have brought it many good people." Linda moved away from the word people. "I don't understand. I just sold food. They are all happy, Didi. Look at their success stories. Happiness is a good trade, Didi agreed. She opened the brass box. Linda gasped. Inside were ingredients for about 24 meals, but they were unlike anything she had ever seen. They didn't just look fresh, they glowed. Some thick cuts of meat had a soft, pale purple light flickering on their surface. Others looked like spun moonlight, a dense mist caught in the shape of a perfect yam. They were bright, scary, and completely amazing. These, Didi announced, touching a yam that pulsed with a faint silver light, are special. They are for those who want sudden, major, and permanent change, the kind that changes a person's whole path overnight. The breakthrough meals. Linda backed away, hitting the wall. Her terror finally became stronger than her greed. No, Didi, I can't. This is too much. I want to stop. I don't want these. They are not normal. Didi's smile disappeared. The air in the room seemed to turn instantly cold. We have an agreement, Linda. You chose to accept the first earnings. You chose to fix up the building. You chose this life. I was hungry, Linda begged, tears starting to fall. I was desperate. I didn't know you meant this. This is bad luck. The choice is simple, Didi said, her voice turning cold and sharp. Accept the gift, cook them, sell them at the price they are worth, or reject them, and the river will take more than your money. It will destroy your life. It will drag your beautiful kitchen down to the mud, and you will go back to Abuja worse than when you left. Linda saw the image Didi described, the sleek, air-conditioned space sinking into the deep green water, her elegant chairs covered in slime, the beautiful counter staring blankly into the current. She saw herself back in that tiny blue room in Abuja, poorer and defeated, haunted by a ghost she couldn't explain. She looked at the brass box, then at the cash box on the counter, then back at Didi's cold, demanding face. Greed and fear fought a quick, fierce battle. The fear of being poor was stronger than the fear of the unknown. Linda swallowed the scream stuck in her throat. All right, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I will cook and sell them. Didi's face softened a little. A smart choice, daughter of the land. The river rewards loyalty. She left as quietly as she arrived, the rain still drumming outside. The next morning, Linda posted images of the glowing May meals. She wrote careful captions, calling them Breakthrough Meals Limited Edition, and setting the price at an outrageous 500,000 naira per plate. The orders rushed in immediately. The orders for the breakthrough meals came from the most desperate, ambitious, and important people. One of the first customers to buy the most strikingly beautiful meal, a glistening silver mist fish dish, was Nancy Blue. Nancy Blue was a famous social media star, known across the country for her luxurious life and constant search for attention. She received the meal by a special delivery person and posted a bright, confident picture immediately. Breakthrough achieved, she wrote. Thank you, Linda's feast. Days later, the news hit the internet like a bomb. Nancy Blue was dead. The official reports were confused. She was found in her secured high-rise apartment, alone. There was no sign of a break-in, no struggle, and no clear reason for her death. Yet, the first medical reports were shocking. Her lungs were completely full of water. It was as if she had drowned in a deep swimming pool, but her apartment was dry. The special fish dish plate was found empty next to her, and the smell of the powerful, unnatural spices still hung in the air. The world was shocked. The news guessed wildly. A strange murder, a secret pool in her apartment, a sudden, deadly health problem. Linda, watching the news on her phone, felt a cold, sharp horror take hold of her chest. She had killed her. Her greed had supplied the deadly food. The meals didn't just change lives, they traded them for water. But the horror was quickly replaced by a sick realization of her trap. Even with the chaos, people still begged to buy the same meal that had killed Nancy Blue. The demand shot up. If it gives that much power, I will risk the cost, the messages seemed to scream. The waiting list for the breakthrough meals grew to hundreds. Linda couldn't stand it. The money no longer felt like safety. It felt like bloody sand falling through her fingers. That night, a powerful thunderstorm arrived. It was louder and more violent than any before. Rain beat the glass windows, and the river outside roared with a loud, hungry sound. Linda, frantic and desperate, grabbed the brass box. It was still heavy, still giving off that strange, unnatural warmth. She ran out of the back door and stumbled through the mud toward the Obu Water Side. The riverbank was a terrible mix of splashing water and thick black mud. Linda fell to her knees, screaming Didi's name over the sound of the thunder. "Take it back! Take it all back!" she shrieked, her tears mixing with the rain. "I don't want the money. I don't want the power. I don't want this curse." She threw the brass box with all her strength into the churning, dark water. It landed with a dull thud and instantly disappeared, swallowed by the current. Linda stood there, exhausted, soaked, and finally relieved. It's over. She had ended the agreement. She dragged herself back into the kitchen, cleaned the mud from her body, and fell into a troubled, haunted sleep. The next morning, the sun was bright and normal. Linda woke up, feeling the dull pain of a terrible nightmare, and walked into the main kitchen area. There, in the center of her polished steel counter, sat the brass box. It was completely dry, polished, and calm. It didn't have a single scratch or a speck of river mud on its bindings. It sat there, patient and completely in charge, as if waiting for her to get back to work. Linda stumbled back, covering her mouth to stop a scream. She understood then. There was no simple way out. Throwing it into the water was like throwing it back into Didi's house. The bond was spiritual, tied to the very essence of the river, and it was too strong to break. She was trapped, a merchant of miracles, collecting debts for the water. On the outside, Linda was living her perfect dream. Her kitchen, Linda's feast, was now a regional hotspot. She was praised everywhere and even by the local community as a food healer and a miracle cook. Companies chased her for deals, and clients traveled from far away, desperate for the slightest taste of her apparent good fortune. She was rich, respected, and famous. But on the inside, Linda was falling apart. The money piled up, but she couldn't enjoy it. She paid off Mama Emeka, built a beautiful new home for herself away from the river, and bought a comfortable car. Still, she rarely drove it, preferring to walk the short, dreaded distance between her house and the kitchen. The new large house felt empty and accusing, and the river was always there, waiting at the edge of her success. Her nights became a frightening series of water-filled images. She would fall asleep and immediately feel the heavy weight of green water all around her. She dreamed of women without faces. They were always wet, their long black hair floating around them like plants. They sat in her kitchen, but the kitchen was underwater, leaning slightly on the muddy riverbed. They ate from plates made of bone, and they sang. They sang in a language Linda had never heard, a low musical hum that moved with the current. Their eyes, when they turned them toward her, were empty, staring at nothing. Sometimes the dream was more real. She would see her own reflection in the water-filled window, looking terrified. Then unseen ropes of riverweed would wrap around her ankles, pulling her down toward the dark, hungry silt. She would wake up screaming, her body cold and covered in sweat, the sound of the river's steady murmur outside the only real thing. Her work life was painful. Every time she touched an ingredient from Didi's supply, her hands felt numb, cold, and heavy. It wasn't the food she felt, it was the chilling sense of the river's current passing through her. When a client left her kitchen looking successful or confident, Linda saw not a happy woman, but a small bright light in her chest growing dim, exchanged for the temporary power the meal gave them. She moved wildly between guilt and simply ignoring the truth. "It's just food," she would tell herself, scrubbing the kitchen floor. "I am just running a business. People die. Nancy Blue must have had a bad heart." But then she would remember Didi's words. The river feeds those who feed it. She was feeding the river people's futures in exchange for wealth. She was helping a supernatural crime. She blamed herself for opening the door that night, for being so desperate that she couldn't see the price of the easy path. Yet the other choice, returning to the shame of failure, the humiliation of Abuja, the Maggie cubes, was impossible. She could not imagine going back to being unknown. She had tasted real power, even if it was borrowed, and that taste was too hard to quit. She kept selling. She smiled for the cameras, accepted the praise, and told herself it was just good luck. She put on a brave, confident face for her staff and her clients, hiding the fact that every night she was sinking deeper into the cold, silent depths of her own mind. Linda had become a prisoner in her own feast. The final visit did not come with a violent storm or a scary nightmare. It came on a quiet, normal morning, just after the sun had cleared the river mist. Linda was alone, getting the kitchen ready for the day's first customers. She heard no knock, no sound of the door opening. She simply turned from the counter and saw Didi standing there. Didi looked different this time. She was beautiful, sad, and wore a look of deep, old acceptance. She no longer looked like a secret client, she looked like a queen waiting to take her place. Didi carried a box. It was smaller than the brass one, made of polished silver and completely simple. There was no glow, no purple light, no shimmer. It was quiet, heavy, and final. "The time is done, Linda," Didi said, her voice softer than ever, almost a sigh. Linda did not scream or run. She simply stood, feeling numb. "What time? What do you want now?" "My service to the river is complete," Didi replied, "and yours is about to begin. The river is always moving. It needs someone always working for it. I have brought you your final reward and your final task." Didi placed the silver box on the counter. On top of it was a piece of paper, damp and curled. Linda picked it up. The writing was faded, but the message was clear. Only for Linda. No one else must eat this. Linda looked from the note to Didi, her heart cold with fear. "What is in here?" "Your destiny," Didi said simply. "The final, perfect link. The river cannot take you by force, but it can take you by choice. The choice is made when you taste it. I made mine 10 years ago. Now you must make yours." Didi paused, her eyes looking past Linda toward the big window. "She was just a child. They dragged me, screaming, toward the bank. They thought they were giving the river a simple sacrifice, a witch. They never knew the river takes its revenge slowly, one person's future at a time. The child they found, that was their fear. I was the real cost." Linda looked at Didi, seeing past the beautiful spirit, seeing the victim, the raw anger, the binding spell. She saw the pain that had turned a woman into a spirit of angry wealth. "Didi," Linda whispered, her voice weak. "Was Amara—" Didi cut her off, her gaze sharp. "The river always takes what it is owed, and it always provides for the person serving it. Now choose. Freedom and being forgotten, or the wealth and power of the river's own daughter." Didi stepped back, melting into the shadows of the room. When Linda looked again, Didi was gone. Linda stood alone. She looked at the door, thinking of running. She looked at the money, thinking of staying. She thought of her shallow, shameful life in Abuja. She thought of the Maggie cubes and the cold gari. She thought of the respect and fame that now followed her name. Slowly, without stopping, she opened the silver box. Inside, resting on a bed of dark, shimmering cloth, was a single, perfect piece of food. It was blacker than coal, smoother than water, and it felt cold to the touch. It had no glow, no purple light. It simply looked like the most magnificent, powerful thing to eat in the world. Linda picked it up. The coldness seeped into her fingers, traveling up her arm. She walked to the window, staring at her thin, desperate reflection. She paused for only a second, a final quick thought of the human part of her soul. Then she put the piece of food on her tongue. As soon as the food touched her, her body froze. A blast of icy energy, like 1,000 volts of freezing water, shot through her. Her mind burst open, and she was violently thrown into a vision. She was 10 years ago. She saw Didi, not the composed spirit, but a terrified young woman screaming, being dragged toward the bank of the Obu River by a crowd of angry villagers. She saw their faces, the chief, Mama Emeka, even a younger Mama Alaka, their looks of fear and superstition. They pulled Didi into the water, forcing her under. Then the vision shifted. Linda was back in her kitchen, but the windows were liquid and the floor was mud. The entire room was sinking, slowly, constantly, dragged down into the deep green water. Ghostly women, her clients, sat around her, eating forever, their empty, silent eyes staring. She tried to spit out the food. Her body fought, but the coldness had spread throughout her, and the food was gone. She looked into the window, terrified. Her reflection had changed. Her own eyes, usually warm and brown, were no longer human. They were cold, perfectly round and black, belonging more to the river's silent, deep creatures than to the world of land. A slow, chilling feeling of peace settled over her. The terror was replaced by immense, cold power. She felt the weight of the Obu Water Side, the secrets it held, the revenge it wanted. She felt the currents, the deep beat of the water, and the massive silent hunger of the earth beneath the banks. Linda's lips trembled, then slowly, frighteningly, curved into a smile. It was Didi's smile, calm and cold. "Thank you for," she whispered, her voice deep, smooth, and echoing with the sound of running water. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Linda had crossed the final line, accepting her new fate. She was the new daughter of the river, bound to Obu Waterside and its hungry peace, ready to collect the price for the next wave of miracles.